The possible signing of PJ Tucker by the Boston Celtics raises a question that goes beyond the player's name or resume. What is the team really looking for with this move? A piece that can impact the game on the court, or just another symbolic figure of leadership to keep the locker room in line? The idea of bringing in Tucker feels much more like an emotional crutch than a tactical solution to the problems the team has been facing for years. There's no doubt about Tucker's respectable career. He carries the reputation of a warrior with a competitive mentality that everyone admires. But at this stage of his career, at 39 years old, and having barely played this season, what can he actually offer in practice? Is the Celtics really looking for another veteran voice to calm the locker room? Or are they just trying to cover up structural issues with motivational speeches? The franchise's own recent history exposes this trap. Brad Stevens has already resorted to this formula before, and the results were disappointing. Tristan Thompson arrived in 2021 with the champion stamp from the Cavs, but he was little more than a background figure. Danilo Gallinari was signed to add experience in 2022, but never even stepped on the court for the team. Blake Griffin, locker room leadership, jokes on the bench, and irrelevant minutes when the game really mattered. Why would PJ Tucker be any different? What does he offer today that those other names didn't? The bigger issue is that the Celtics' problem was never a lack of dogs in the locker room. Marcus Smart spent nearly a decade as the emotional heart of the team, and they still kept falling short. Al Horford is one of the most respected leaders in the NBA and has been there since 2022. Drew Holiday just arrived and already commands respect on and off the court. The experience is there. What the Celtics lack isn't someone to yell in the locker room. It's a more adjusted game plan, a more reliable rotation, and a more flexible approach in decisive moments. If Tucker were still a player who offered consistent defensive impact or quality minutes as a corner three shooter, the conversation would be different. But that's not the case. He couldn't even stay in the rotation for the Clippers or Bucks recently. What remains is simply the myth of the tough guy. But that myth doesn't win Game 7 on the road. The possible signing of PJ Tucker by the Boston Celtics wouldn't just be a market move, it would be a message. Maybe even a heavier message than the team itself would like to admit. Behind the familiar narrative of adding veteran leadership hides a dangerous subtext. The Celtics need someone to restore order in the locker room, because even after everything this team has been through, they still don't fully trust the personality of their own group. The idea of bringing in Tucker gives the impression that the locker room needs someone to shout, demand, and point fingers when things get tough. But isn't that a clear sign that the emotional project of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown has failed? So far, if a team that just won a championship, stacked with veterans, still feels the need for a sheriff to maintain focus, the issue goes far beyond tactical adjustments. It's a matter of identity. This obsession with finding vocal leadership has become a recurring narrative in Boston, but no one ever asks why. The Miami Heat brought in PJ Tucker in 2022 to elevate a team that already had Jimmy Butler as its emotional alpha. The Milwaukee Bucks did the same in 2021 to complete a roster where Giannis Antetokounmpo was already the franchise leader in every possible aspect. But the difference is that in those teams, Tucker was a complementary piece, a reinforcement to amplify a mentality that already existed, not someone to fill a void. In Boston, the feeling is the opposite. Tucker's presence would be almost like hiring a security guard for a group that still isn't sure if it can fully trust itself. If Tatum and Brown are truly the stars the Celtics believe they are, why does the team need a veteran to keep the group emotionally focused? Why does a championship-winning roster feel the need to bring in a father figure to stay competitive? Shouldn't Tatum be the guy who commands respect in the locker room by now? Shouldn't Brown be the one rallying the group in moments of tension? That doubt is the most uncomfortable part of this whole story. Ever since this duo was formed, the debate about their personality has always been in the air. Are they talented? Without a doubt. Are they stars? Absolutely. But are they true leaders? That question has never had a clear answer. The Celtics would be buying an aging version of a player in decline. The Boston Celtics would be acquiring an aging version of a player who has been in clear decline for at least 2 seasons. The name PJ Tucker still carries the emotional weight of the figure who helped the Milwaukee Bucks win the title in 2021, but that version of him is long gone. Since then, what we've seen is a sequence of seasons where Tucker offered more narrative than actual impact on the court. In the last 2 years, both the Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers fell into the trap of believing that his presence in the locker room would compensate for his physical decline. But when the ball went up in the playoffs, reality hit hard. Tucker could no longer keep up with explosive perimeter players, got stuck in unfavorable matchups, and, worse, occupied valuable minutes in the rotation without delivering anything offensively. The Celtics, who consistently complain about the lack of dynamism in certain parts of their bench, would be adding exactly the kind of player that slows down the offense even more. Tucker no longer shoots with volume, doesn't have the mobility to attack closeouts, and barely scores inside the paint. He has become the classic player who is on the floor, but nobody notices. And that's the worst thing that can happen in a playoff rotation. The biggest risk with Tucker isn't that he might not work. It's that the Celtics might not have the courage to bench him, even if he's hurting the team. This has already happened on other teams, and Boston wouldn't be immune to the same mistake. When you bring in a veteran with this profile, there is an invisible pressure to keep him on the floor. He becomes a symbolic presence, the guy who can't be left out because he's important to the locker room. But how many times have we seen veteran players in the NBA become dead weight simply because their leadership off the court starts to outweigh what they actually deliver on it? In Philadelphia, Tucker was a non-factor in the 2023 playoffs, playing almost 30 minutes per game and finishing the postseason with averages of 3, 5 points, and 3.9 rebounds. Yet Doc Rivers refused to take him out of the rotation because of his leadership. That didn't help Embiid, didn't help Harden, and in the end, it only made the team slower and more predictable. If Tucker comes to Boston, there's a real risk the same story repeats itself. When you sign a veteran like him, the emotional package comes along. The Celtics have already fallen into this trap before. Blake Griffin last season, Danilo Gallinari before his injury, Tristan Thompson in 2021. All of them arrived with the leadership narrative, but ended up becoming invisible burdens that no one had the courage to cut. The question is, did the Celtics learn from those mistakes, or are they about to make them again? Another point no one is talking about is that Tucker isn't the type of veteran who accepts being just a symbolic piece. He's known for being vocal, demanding minutes, and insisting on his place in the rotation. The moment the Celtics sign Tucker, they would be creating a delicate dynamic in the locker room. What if Joe Mazzulla decides not to use him? Would Tucker quietly accept sitting out, or would he start generating internal noise? Bringing someone in to keep the group focused could end up creating exactly the type of distraction the team is trying to avoid. The most ironic part is that the Celtics don't need PJ Tucker as a leadership figure, because this team already has veterans who play that role without causing drama. Drew Holiday is a champion, Al Horford is the ultimate professional, and Derek White is respected by the entire roster. What exactly would Tucker bring that those guys don't already offer? The feeling is that the Celtics would be signing a vocal leader just for the noise, not for the need. Another overlooked aspect: Tucker doesn't fit the playing style the Celtics built this season. This team thrives on spacing, quick ball movement, and three-point shooting, none of which Tucker contributes anymore. Boston doesn't need another player who simply parks himself in the corner, waiting for the ball to come. What the team needs is more fluidity in the second unit, and Tucker goes completely against that. The truth is that the image of PJ Tucker today is more of a narrative construction than a genuinely useful piece for a contender. He has become a kind of emotional talisman, the guy every team wants to have, even if they don't really need him. But when the season ends, it almost always becomes clear that his real impact was minimal. If the Celtics want someone to keep the team focused, that role should come from within, from their stars, from their natural leaders. Signing PJ Tucker would be yet another shortcut to solve a problem the group needs to face head-on. In the end, this signing might say more about the Celtics' own insecurity than about what Tucker still has to offer. If Boston truly believes this roster is mentally strong, they shouldn't even be considering this move. And if the Celtics need PJ Tucker to stay focused. Maybe the problem is much bigger than anyone is willing to admit.